Walls and fortifications are making a comeback. Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the southern border of the USA, Ukraine, and NATO's eastern flank. What are the advantages and disadvantages of building a fortress? It's a military axiom which says he who defends everything defends nothing. So, perhaps think of Hadrian's Wall, the Great Wall of China, or the Maginot Line perhaps. So join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Hadrian's Wall, the Great Wall of China, or the Maginot Line. All of these historic structures were designed to successfully counter enemy attacks and act as repellent for all those who consider invasion. Heavily staffed with deployed soldiers, fortifications were efficient in discouraging enemies from attacks, given that the outlook for a successful operation was openly lower. These strategic lessons from the past have their use in the present and possibly the future. More and more countries elect to erect new walls and fortifications.
I would build a great wall.
One of the most notable recent examples is Donald Trump's flagship platform during the 2016 US presidential elections of building a fortified wall on the border with Mexico in order to curb migration routes and making Mexico pay for its construction. The idea, which ultimately did not come into fruition during the 4 years of Trump's tenure, generated a significant buzz worldwide and was one of the key debate topics of the presidency. Not to say that Trump's vision was the idea's origin, but since the beginning of Russia's aggression on Ukraine and the subsequent Belarusian hybrid warfare targeted at NATO's eastern flank, the notion of a fortified border wall protecting a country's security became increasingly more popular in Europe. Just recently, Poland's defense minister has unveiled details of the Eastern Shield plan that will fortify the country's borders with Belarus and Russia. The government will allocate over €2.35 billion to the 2024-2028 program, which will also receive funding from the EU, as Poland rushes to improve its defenses on its eastern borders owing to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The idea was well received by Poland's allies, with other NATO member states considering their options to improve fortification defenses. One of the ideas brings the concept of a wall into the digital era. The Baltic states, together with Poland, Finland and Norway, plan to create a drone wall on their respective borders with Russia and Belarus. Its purpose would be to monitor all at-risk areas and inform military troops stationed nearby.
I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, General Jarosław Kraszewski, and he is the former Armed Forces Supervision Department Director at the Polish National Security. So welcome to the programme.
Hey, hello.
Great to have you. General, let's start off with the Eastern Shield. It's the shield of the NATO's eastern flank, and as you said earlier, the European Union's eastern flank. What do we know about it in terms of its composition and its purpose? We know that there's a fence upon the border. So what else we're going to build?
A couple of things. First of all, it's a very complex installation. Secondly, by nature, it's a bit classified in terms of military. Why? I will describe it a couple of seconds later. This morning we had a briefing by the Vice Prime Minister, who is a MOD and Chief of General Staff, showing the initial idea how the Eastern Shield should look like in the matter of, let's say, 4 years by the investments and engagement by the different services as well as the different ministers. Why is a bit classified, in my opinion? It's obvious that such an installation should be built up for the peacetime. And the second portion of it should be dedicated only for the wartime, and the wartime installation should be fully classified. Why? First of all, enemy tries to take as much as possible from such plans in order to rearrange the concept of operations if the enemy wants to attack a particular country. This is why higher ranking officers should keep it as a, let's say, top secret.
Sure.
And the peacetime installation is dedicated to protect our territory against special groups trying to go from Russian Federation and Belarus, where they are currently well trained in special camps located in the Russian Federation. And why such groups? Because within the members, let's say, of such groups, at least a couple of them, they are the best trained in order to organize the sabotage and espionage and guerrilla war fighting, and especially in the close vicinity of the key infrastructure elements of our industry and our transportation, airports, harbors, and so on and so forth. This is why the peacetime installation should protect our territory. Wartime, it's just to force the enemy to move the troops in the different ways than they have initially planned or pre-planned. This is for making chaos initially in the operations. This is to, if the enemy is still going on towards our territory, is just to make the movement as slow as possible, to create the conditions for my heart, which is the field artillery, for the tubes and guns to destroy all the elements of the order of battle of the enemy approaching our territory. So the general staff, together with the troops and the local population, I see the huge role for the territorial defense units and the local governments to specify the specific pieces of terrain where the artillery, tubes and guns, and the Air Force should be ready to destroy enemy very quickly.
So you can channel the any enemy attack into a kind of killing ground.
Right.
At the time, the current time, we are facing also a challenge from weaponized migrant groups. You mentioned these small sabotage groups. Is a line of fortifications able to do all three, to guard against a conventional attack and also to deter civilian intrusion?
Yes and no. Defense itself is just to to minimize the movement of such groups towards our territory, but normally it has to be equipped with the, let's say, the high-tech devices like a lot of sensors, radars, detectors, infrared, thermal cameras, and other equipment, just to give you the time to make proper decisions. Because if you have a high intensity war fighting or the crisis situation which is getting towards the war, you have to make decisions very quickly. So this is why you need to at least a couple of seconds to think about the possible courses of action you have to take. Secondly, if you have sensors together with defense, you need to have the effectors. So different systems to protect our territory against, for instance, drones. Drones is a new tool in the modern war fighting. So Vice Prime Minister has declared a new branch in the service, which is about the drones and the UAVs, and this is, in my opinion, critical decision, and such service should include also the anti-drone capabilities, like jammers and other equipment.
Does this represent a revolution in military affairs, as we heard in the 1990s about guided weapons? when we think about the fortifications across a border or a longer border, we naturally think of things like the Maginot Line or the Hindenburg Line, fixed defences, machine guns, artillery, that sort of stuff. Is that the wrong way of seeing what we're building today?
No.
Inaccurate way.
Such protections, but not particularly similar to those lines you have mentioned. But we need to protect the border, first of all, for those conditions that I have described at the beginning of our interview. And secondly, the modern war fighting, the battle space moves up. So from the ground level up to beyond the skies. 2 or 3 years ago, we said that the sky is the limit. Right now, it's not valid anymore. So we need to have the satellites dedicated for communication, observation, and navigation. And those armies which have such tools like satellites and assets like combat jets and drones and UAVs operating with the very high speed. The previous Chief of General Staff, General Andrzejczak, he has said that the speed is a key for success. And I fully agree that the speed matters. Who operates with the higher pace of combat operations that wins the war. If you have new tools to support this idea, and the new tool is exactly the drone and anti-drone capabilities, that's exactly the modern war fighting. And this is also what I pointed out, that the defense itself is good, but not enough. It should be equipped with a lot of electronics.
So a future battlefield, in a sense, would allow you to look over the wall and you can't assemble any attacking force because, as you said, you'll be immediately picked up or observed.
Yes, you're
vice versa. I suppose.
You're fully right, and I call it the digital fortification. If you have capabilities to organize such digital fortifications along the border with your potential enemy, you're at the position favorite for you to win any struggles between the clashes between the enemy's forces and your own.
I think it was Frederick the Great who said a line isn't strong everywhere. So what are the weak points of this sort of defence? Digital observation, ground lines, bunkers, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, it's very difficult to hide the construction process of such elements of, let's say, the line of fortification. If we are talking about the bunkers, shelters, or even the T-walls and other obstacles, even if you would like to modify the key feature terrains, natural, it's very easy to observe by the enemy, especially if you have satellites.
So all these kind of anti-tank defences that we see being sown.
But it's good because if we invest money right now and enemy knows about it, and we create this specific corridors to enter, let's say in this way, our territory, and those places are dedicated for, we call it joint fire support. So the Air Force, together with tubes and guns, destroyed mostly everything. American military calls that kill box. So whatever shows up in the kills within the kill box is just destroyed immediately. And this is the initial and the very fundamental idea how we have decided to build up such a lane along the border with Russian Federation and Belarus.
What's the difference between the Polish strategic thought and, say, the Finnish model? We've heard that the Finns are moving a kind of defence in depth or retreating it through their forests. Is that because their terrain favours that kind of fighting, whereas the Polish terrain favours manoeuvre or observation a bit more?
Yes, exactly. There is a difference in the ways how we see the war fighting, how the Finland wants to organize it. Is the distance, the front distance in Finland is much longer than in Poland. And the natural key terrain features are also different. And what more, the temperatures. And basically the population, we are much larger than the Finnish population, and we are able to create, besides the regular army, like during the World War II, we have an AK army, and as well we had the largest guerrilla troops around the globe. So in our strategy, the main domain is terrain and ground. But in order to introduce the land forces to do the job, or we call it to do the final job, we are supposed to operate very actively in the air by the combat jets. This is why we are having right now F-16s. We are so close to have F-35, and we have to think about the satellites and drones and UAVs.
A final question to you, General. The enemy, of course, is going to try and find out all the potential weak points in the defences. In the First World War, it was the tank, which was able to cross fields of machine gun and barbed wire emplacements. What do you think is there a particular weapon that could breach the defences, or has it not just been invented yet?
This is exactly the classified portion which is dedicated for the military and for the wartime. But if we have such weak points, I'm sure that enemy can find it. And the Polish army, and not only the Polish army, is equipped with special launchers to create the minefields in a very short time. So we can deploy such launchers in a particular time and place and do it very quickly. So the movement of even the tanks coming from eastern districts, military districts of Russian Federation will be slowed down dramatically.
General Jarosław Kraszewski, thanks for coming onto the programme. We have to wind it up there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's all we have time for today. Join us next time for How We Got Here.